The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL.
The 49ers making moves, kind of saw it coming. They have added a wide receiver via trade from the Kansas City Chiefs, Skyy Moore.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Big breaking news today, Croc, and kind of saw it coming. Niners had been sniffing around. There were reports earlier in the day, Wednesday, that the 49ers were making calls on wide receivers, and they found a guy that fit pretty much all the criteria we laid out here just a couple of days ago, talking about the 49ers when they did not land John Mechie via trade. They have found a trade partner with the Kansas City Chiefs, and it is wide receiver Skyy Moore, fourth-year wide receiver going into the last year of his rookie contract. And he was a former second-round pick and a well-thought-of prospect. I know you and I talked about Skyy Moore a lot on this podcast, and we liked him enough to think he was certainly worthy of that second-round selection at the time by the Kansas City Chiefs. And the reason I say he hits all the criteria we were talking about, it was pretty clear that the 49ers weren't going to make a big move. And I know some 49ers fans, Croc, wanted a bigger move, a bigger name at wide receiver. And talked a little bit today online about, Romeo Dobbs and, Dontavian Wicks is a guy we both liked before the draft, especially you. And it's like, yeah, that'd be nice. I got a lot of numbers in Green Bay. Could they make that happen? No. There was a number of players we talked about, but Skyy Moore is a name we didn't really mention, but it was like perfect. As soon as I saw the name Skyy Moore, I was like, oh, exactly. Yes, that is exactly what we were talking about. Fits exactly what the 49ers wanted. He's a veteran player. He's someone that you can expect that could get on the field and play for you right away if you need him as early as week 1 to be on the football field as a wide receiver. He had an 88-yard punt return just 4 days ago for a touchdown for the Kansas City Chiefs, right? So a guy that has some utility. He could have a uniform on week 1 Sunday against the Seattle Seahawks. He can return some kicks for you. He could be your number 3, 4 wide receiver. When everybody comes back, you didn't spend a lot on him. He could be your 5 wide receiver. Heck, you could cut him if you wanted to at some point later on in the season once you do have numbers back at wide receiver if he's not making an impact for you. And to be honest with you, he didn't. He was really underwhelming with the Kansas City Chiefs and did not make the impact most people thought he would, even when he had opportunities with the Kansas City Chiefs. But he's cheap, both via trade and dollars, because he is in the last year of his rookie contract, something like a $1.5 million on his final 4th year as a second-round player in base salary. And the 49ers only had to swap the 6th and 7th round picks in 2027 draft. So about as close to free as you can get as far as trades go. And it's probably a similar thing that they were offering for John Mechie, and Houston got a little better player. They thought a better offer from the Philadelphia Eagles for Mechie. Skyy Moore, Croc, what are your thoughts on Skyy Moore? Do you remember what the scouting report was on Skyy Moore coming out of, Central Michigan in 2022?
Yeah, I definitely remember him. And watching him, it was definitely a little bit underwhelming at Kansas City. I was at football practice when the news broke, and we get out of practice, and one of my players said, "Hey, Coach Croc, 49ers, they traded for Skyy Moore." And I'm like, okay, Skyy Moore, okay. And they're like, oh, man, I'm so excited about this. And I was like, not that I'm not excited, but Skyy Moore was on a Kansas City Chief team that was doing everything possible to get production out of receivers. I mean, they were struggling to find anyone who could be productive as a receiver, and he couldn't step up with every opportunity in the world, let alone one of the masterminds as an offensive coordinator. Like, if there's anyone that will figure out how to utilize a player, there's a couple of people. Actually, Kyle Shanahan is one of them. And another one is Andy Reid. So the fact that Andy Reid struggled to get any type of real consistency out of Skyy Moore or any type of role in their offense, it was a little worrisome. But the things that I do like, he does have playmaking ability. You talked about the return that he recently had. He is a guy that is more of a utility player. We're not going to say he's Deebo Samuel. He had kind of a special burst, especially at his peak. But he's a guy that is a veteran, and clearly they've been looking for those guys, the veteran that can come in, understand how to play in the offense, and potentially take on some kind of a role. Talked about what the 49ers gave up to get him almost as free as possible. So, nothing about this hurts the 49ers, but you have a player and you're giving him an opportunity to show some ability that he was unable to showcase in Kansas City.
You knew something was very wrong very early with Skyy Moore when he trotted out with the number 24, right? It was like, what are we doing here? There was some Golden Tate comparisons, right, with Skyy Moore. Can he be a wide back for the 49ers? He's built a little bit almost like a running back. He's sub 5'10". He's listed 5'10". He's 5'9" and 5'8". Looking at his combine measurements right now, 5'9" and 5'8", 195 pounds. Weird combination of short arms, 31-inch arm length, but huge hands. 94th percentile hand size, 10.25-inch hands. So big hands, short arms for Skyy Moore coming out of school. Scorching 40-yard dash, 4.41 seconds. He was, I think, 4.39 unofficial. The official laser time got him over the 4.4 mark. So it was 4.4140. A really good 97th percentile, 1.46 10-yard split. And then 34.5-inch vertical, kind of average agilities. And when you watch Skyy Moore play with the Kansas City Chiefs, he was a little bit of an all-around kind of playmaker, guy that you thought could carry the ball a little bit, do a lot of things. And in Kansas City, I think probably the biggest problem was I just don't think he's been really a great route runner. And he's not a guy that's open a lot. And so you have to find ways to force feed him the ball. And I just don't know if that's what the Chiefs offense really shines in doing.
It's very interesting with somebody with his dynamic ability. I mean, that was the big thing when he was coming out of college, just utility type of player. And I think those players are getting more and more popular. Heck, even look at a guy like A.J. Brown. I don't know if A.J. Brown coming out of Ole Miss was the most refined route runner, but he found ways to get open, catch the ball. And then, these special run after catch abilities really took over. We saw that same class with Deebo Samuel coming out of South Carolina. But with Skyy Moore, I think they figured he would have that kind of ability and they can get the most out of it. And it just never materialized into anything. And again, he had a lot of opportunities. Now, he missed last year. So was big injury or something? Like what happened there?
Yeah, I don't remember what it was last year, but he didn't play at all or didn't have any stats at all last year. He ended up with 3 targets, but was around for 6 games. But he was just kind of so far down the depth chart that he wasn't really a factor anymore for the Kansas City Chiefs. So but he did only play 6 games last year. And then in the first 2 years of his career, 2022 and 2023, he only had about 250 yards in each of those seasons. So he's still, for his career, is only 43 catches for less than 500 yards, 494 yards and 1 receiving touchdown. And then he's carried the rock a few times, had some, returns as well. But really, I mean, a huge disappointment for a second round pick when you've got the best quarterback in the game, one of the best offensive coaches in the game, and 500 yards over the course of 3 years. I mean, yeah, you can see why the Kansas City Chiefs were ready to trade him for basically nothing to the 49ers.
Yeah. What do you think the 49ers are looking for? Is it just kind of more depth, camp body, and he's a guy that they potentially can let go at the cut down, or they want him to be a part of what they're doing, at least to start the season, to help them kind of smooth over that transition until they get Brandon Ayuk back?
Yeah, I think that's it. I touched on a little bit at the beginning. It was more like, okay, the guy has to be cheap. We're not going to pay a lot for somebody because the player we envision bringing in isn't going to get in the way of the guys we really want to be the guys. We just might have to wait a little while for the guys we want to be the guys because Brandon Ayuk is hurt. Juwan Jennings right now is banged up. Hopefully he's ready by week 1. Don't know what his status is exactly right now. Demarcus Robinson, we'll talk about him in a second, officially out for at least the first 3 weeks. Cowing, another injury, his first day back again. He's had 2 practices and 2 injuries so far. Just a brutal camp for Jacob Cowing. And then the 4th round rookie, that's one thing that at least Skyy Moore is a rookie. And you could probably expect that he will have some knowledge of where to be and be in the right place at the right time, hopefully. And who knows, maybe not. Maybe that's why he never got the rock with the Kansas City Chiefs. So you didn't give up much. You could cut him tomorrow and not feel terrible about it, I think is probably the big thing. But also he's an NFL player that could have a role in week 1 if you really need a guy to. And I think that's exactly the notes that the 49ers wanted to strike with the player they brought in and didn't want to have to spend a lot to get that player because they think they like what they're going to have mid-season. They just have to wait for that to kind of all come together at the wide receiver position.
August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is your moment. Perhaps you believe the Green Bay Packers are going to win the Super Bowl, or maybe you have some division winner dark horses you'd like to parlay. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bet now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game.
Tyson Bagent earning a big contract extension is one of the coolest Chicago Bears stories of the last few years. The big Bears news of Wednesday was Tyson Bagent getting a contract extension, I think 2 years, $10 million worth up to $16 million in incentives. And as far as NFL quarterback contracts go, right, that's not anything crazy. That's right in line with other quality backup quarterbacks in the league. I think, you've got Zach Wilson got a $6 million a year from the Dolphins. Jaron Stidham got $6 million a year from the Broncos. So he slots in just below that, but just above, like, Joe Flacco got a little over $4 million to be a starter for the Cleveland Browns, and Andy Dalton got $4 million from the Panthers. Jameis Winston got $4 million from the Giants. So he's kind of right there in the middle of those two groups. It feels like a really solid salary for a quality young backup quarterback. And I just think it's so impressive and so notable that the new coaching staff comes in and gets to work with Tyson Bagent for realistically what they start actually working together and doing like workout stuff in like April is when they're kind of the first coaches working with players in any capacity. So we've got maybe 4 months of working with Tyson Bagent, and they say, yep, we've seen enough. Let's lock him into a big 2-year contract. Because it's not as though they had to sign him to an extension right now. We know he's entering the last year of his contract and was getting paid peanuts, but under the structure of the CBA, he would have been next offseason a restricted free agent, meaning the Bears would have, if they tendered him on the front end, they would have the right to match any contract he might get from another team. So even if he wanted to test the open market and see if another team would give him a bigger opportunity, the Bears always had control over Tyson Bagent's next contract. So they didn't have to sign the deal right now. They could have even seen, hey, let's see how this regular season goes. And maybe if Caleb Williams misses a half or whatever here and there, if Tyson Bagent has to get any regular season action, maybe you see how that looks and then you give him the extension. But I think the fact that he was able to endear himself to this coaching staff and get that deal now, just based on what training camp practices and 2 preseason games, says a lot about how much Ben Johnson and company have been impressed. Like, it'd be different if this was year 3 with Matt Eberflus and year 3 with the previous coaching staff. And okay, now they've been around him for long enough that they say, yep, let's give him a big deal. But Ben Johnson and company agreed and said, no, we like this guy too. Let's make sure he stays here. So let's hear from Ben Johnson about what he's seen from Tyson Bagent, including Ben Johnson's admission that, yeah, we think he's a starting caliber NFL quarterback, just maybe not here.
Obviously, in respecting that Caleb Williams is your starter, Tyson Bagent, of course, considers himself starting caliber level. Do you consider him, does he have that in him to be a starter in the National Football?
Yeah, I don't think there's any question about it. I mean, he's I've really been blown away by his approach from the spring to the start of camp to where we are now. He does a tremendous job knowing what to do, how to do it, and getting it done. So I don't think you can have enough talent in that room. I think we actually have one of the best rooms in the NFL, certainly that I've been around in my career from top to bottom. I mean, we got 3-4 guys that can play in this league. And so I feel really strongly about where we're at right there.
Surprised about what you've seen from Tyson Bagent?
No, I'm not surprised. I mean, you come in a new situation, and of course, I'd seen a little crossover tape over the last few years of him being out on the field, but the people in the building already had such a high opinion of him that no, I wasn't surprised by anything that he's done so far.
Specifically with his approach, what blew you away, and what has left an impression on you about him?
Yeah, no, he and I are probably wired very similar. Just the when he enters a room, he's usually all business. And so to get him to crack a smile sometimes is a challenge, which we like to do. We like to, as coaches, you try to find that right balance of having a little levity at times, but at the same time making sure what we need to get across gets across. And so we try to loosen him up. So because he's so serious about his job, he wants to do so well, and he wants the team to do well that he's always locked in. So I can appreciate that about him because I can relate.
That's about as strong of an endorsement of a backup quarterback as you're going to hear. And especially when it comes from someone like Ben Johnson, who knows offense, knows quarterbacks, and can connect with a player like that. It just really is an all-around great story there. And it's worth keeping in mind, too, like this is not going to like financially cripple the Chicago Bears in any way. I mean, $5 million a year is not nothing, but certainly not going to be, a top 25, well, maybe certainly not a top 10 paid player on this team on a per year average. And we'll see how the money actually like is spread out over the course of the contract. He's still going to be a very, very affordable backup quarterback, but going from a guy who was making less than $1 million in salary to now $5 million a year average in salary is totally life-changing for Tyson Bagent. Tyson Bagent getting a contract extension like this, going from a guy who came in as a fourth-string Division II undrafted quarterback to working his way into the number 2 role to now looking like a really quality backup is such a cool story in and of itself. And then you add the real human nature, human element to it, and it becomes really something special, something we don't see a lot in sports. It's the stuff that we really love to root for here. Like, think about when the Bears brought in Tyson Bagent as an undrafted free agent. Certainly none of us had ever heard of him at that time, out of Division II program that, none of us were paying attention to. We knew, okay, this kid has a lot of experience, it seems like, but he always felt like a pretty major long shot, and that at best he was going to be on the practice squad because he comes in as an undrafted free agent when they had Justin Fields. They just given PJ Walker a pretty big contract to come in and be the backup, and then they had Nathan Peterman as the number 3, but somehow Bagent beats out all of them to be that number 2 to Justin Fields, and then maybe even more improbably starts a couple of regular season games, wins a regular season game as a starter, as a rookie, undrafted second-round pick, or undrafted player from Division II. Shepard goes 2-2 as a starter in the NFL. I mean, if that had been the extent of the Tyson Bagent story, it still would have been against all odds. Like, if he had never played another snap in the NFL again, that's still pretty unbelievable. And so to now get to the point where he gets this kind of money and goes from like a couple $100,000 to now $5 million, like that's the stuff that will change not only his life, but the life of his family member. And he said during his press conference on Wednesday that he's got I think he said a baby girl on the way. So he's about to be a father, and certainly will change the life of that child than it would be if he wasn't a multi-millionaire NFL quarterback. And so you can imagine how when that reality sinks in for Bagent, it can make him a little bit emotional. So I wanted to play a clip here of Bagent talking about what this means for him and his family in a way that I just think is so human and real and touching and heartwarming for in a sport that is often so robotic and gladiator and tough and whatever. Like, the human side of this is something that it's important for us to kind of check back in on and see the humanity and the players underneath the helmets.
You prepare, and I know you believe that you are a starter in this league. Ever any thought for you to say, I'll let this thing ride out and then go get an opportunity where there isn't a young entrenched starter on the roster?
Of course. I think that's pretty much the only reason why I didn't just sign right then and there, a week or so ago. That definitely went into it. But kind of like I said, being around this staff and this offense, especially the offensive staff, I think that has just been the biggest part in the decision. Besides just how much I love the city of Chicago, how comfortable I am here with everybody. But yeah, that was certainly played a role into it.
You've talked about your family being so important to you. What does this money for people beyond you in your household?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people don't know this, but my dad is he's my right hand man, and he didn't even have running water until he was in high school. So there's definitely a lot of things and people that I could that I think I could certainly help with this gift I've been blessed with. But yeah, just little things like that. Like, I don't really know anybody back at home with any money, so yeah, it feels good. I mean, it's certainly a weight off my shoulders and my family's shoulders, and yeah, it definitely means a lot.
So why do you think it's clicked with you and Ben the way it has?
I think he loves what he does, and he's crazy about it, and I love what I do, and I'm crazy about it too. So I feel like it's just been like that from the start.
So really awesome, cool, touching stuff from Tyson Bagent there. I mean, real life lived experiences that he can literally feel like how life-changing this is for him. And I again say, even if the story stops here, it's a remarkable, improbable story. Like, it was improbable that he ever started and won a couple games as a rookie. It's even more improbable and remarkable that he gets a big contract like this to be a well-paid NFL backup. And yet he's not stopping here either. We heard Ben Johnson say it. We've heard Tyson Bagent say it. Like, he wants to be a starting quarterback in the NFL someday. And he had some hesitation, as we heard, about taking this deal because he knows, well, if he's locked in here, he's not going to be a starting quarterback with Caleb Williams, obviously, clearly the quarterback ahead of him here. But all of this feels to me like this contract will be the last contract Tyson Bagent signs with the Chicago Bears. That after these 2 years of this deal, he is going to want to go pursue that true opportunity to be an NFL starter. And I don't know that, especially if he doesn't play much over the next couple seasons, I don't think a team is going to go out and just in free agency sign him outright and say, yep, we're handing you the keys to the car. You are our guy. But I think he's shown enough as a preseason player and in those couple of games in regular season action that a team could take a chance on him in a quarterback competition type of role.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
The Jets make 2 trades and perhaps improve one of the biggest problem areas on defense.
You are Locked On Jets, your daily New York Jets podcast.
We know the Jets are part of the defensive tackle market. The Jets pulled off not one, but 2 trades yesterday to bring in defensive tackles from other teams. Jawan Briggs was acquired from the Cleveland Browns for a late-round pick swap, and Harrison Phillips was acquired from the Minnesota Vikings for a late-round pick and a late-round pick swap. Now, I'm going to start off by saying that I'm generally speaking not a huge fan of trades at this time of the year. I think the longer you watch the NFL, the more you learn. And I've watched the Jets pull off a lot of August trades in recent years, and a lot of them have not panned out. So I think you have to approach trades at this time of year with caution because, first of all, it can be really tough to bring a guy in at the end of training camp and integrate him into your team. You know, new locker room, new playbook he's got to learn, new coaches. It can be a real challenge. And I remember a few years back after Carl Lawson got hurt, the Jets traded for Shaq Lawson. I thought it was going to be a great move. It just did not pan out for the Jets at all. You also have to be careful because the reason a guy gets traded this time of year is that his original team has no use for him. And if this guy's been on your team through training camp and you're ready to trade him, it can be a red flag. That said, we know that the Jets' defensive tackle spot was incomplete. And what I will say is one of these two trades makes more sense to me than the other. The trade that makes sense is getting Harrison Phillips from the Minnesota Vikings, because this is a guy who has been a quality player through much of his NFL career. He's kind of struggled the last year or two, but only 29. The Vikings are also picking up half of his salary. His salary for the 2025 season, $7.4 million. The Vikings are picking up $3.7 million of that. Now, again, that might be a red flag. The fact the Vikings are willing to pay Harrison Phillips $3.7 million to pay for the Jets. But I think if you look at where the Jets are at the defensive tackle position, and the fact you only give up a late round pick and a late round pick swap, this is a deal that's probably worth making. This is a roll of the dice that I think makes sense for the Jets, because defensive tackle spot is not great right now. You have some veteran guys that they brought in the offseason. I mean, even at the time they brought these guys in, I was not a huge fan of what they were doing. Byron Coward coming in, Derek Nandi coming in, even a guy, Jay Tufele, who had a good preseason game against Green Bay, not a guy who's had like a big time career right now. Harrison Phillips is a guy who, at his best, is a good run defender at the defensive tackle spot. And I think we know that the Jets last year really struggled with defensive tackle against the run. Javon Kinlaw was a disaster. Solomon Thomas was a disaster. Leki Fatu did not do the job. And the Jets, I think, are also looking for somebody who can kind of take some of the pressure off Quinnen Williams. Quinnen Williams is the guy who sees nonstop double teams at the defensive tackle spot. At least that's the way it was under Robert Saleh and Jeff Ulbrich. Phillips is the kind of guy who can absorb double teams. He's the kind of guy that can force that second block to get on him. And that could free up Quinnen Williams for more one-on-one assignments. I think there's little doubt that Harrison Phillips is going to be the starting defensive tackle next to Quinnen Williams. He's got the track record. He's been in the NFL about 7 years. He spent some time with Buffalo. He spent some time with Minnesota. Again, he's a guy who hasn't been great the last year or two, but there's a reasonable chance he can bounce back. If the Jets the Jets coach him up, if the Jets, do all the things that they should be doing around him. This is a guy who has been a quality starter in this league before. I'm of the mindset that a late round pick is always worth it if you can get a quality starter in return in a trade. And the price, the $3.7 million price tag is not bad. If the Jets were absorbing the full salary, I might be scratching my head at this deal a little bit, but I think that this is a chance to upgrade a position that frankly was a problem spot, because after Quinnen Williams, I'm not convinced the Jets really had a quality NFL defensive tackle in here. And while there are question marks about how much Phillips can still produce at this point, because again, he has been down and Minnesota is trading him and picking up half his salary. I mean, these are warning signs if we're being honest. I think that this is a swing of the bat that probably makes sense for the Jets. The deal that I understood less was Jawan Briggs, who was a 7th round pick a year ago out of Cincinnati by the Cleveland Browns. Again, the Jets got him and a 7th round pick in exchange for a 6th round pick. So the price isn't super high, but this is a guy, he was a 7th round pick a year ago. He only played 133 snaps. He spent part of the season on the practice squad. One of the reasons I scratch my head a little bit at this is a guy like Briggs probably was going to be cut. And I'm not convinced that any other team was going to trade for him, because he doesn't really have a big time pedigree. There's really nothing about him that would suggest he'd be a hot commodity. And the Jets also have a really high waiver claim. So odds are the Jets probably could have just gotten this guy if they waited for him to be cut. And that's not true of Harrison Phillips. If Harrison Phillips gets cut, he becomes a free agent. And a guy with his track record in a league where teams need these proven defensive tackles, there's a good chance Harrison Phillips would have been traded for. Briggs, I get less, because I don't see what made him such a hot commodity that the Jets would want to make a deal for him. The only way that this deal ends up making sense is if like Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji are super, super talented at scouting the defensive tackle spot. Now, I think one thing this tells you is that either Denver or Detroit, perhaps both, had a really high draft grade on, or had a decent draft grade on Briggs a year ago when he came out. And maybe he was like a priority UDFA for Denver when Muji was there, or Detroit when Glenn was there. This is another guy who projects as kind of a run-stopping defensive tackle. Look, if the Jets traded a draft pick for him, he's going to be on the roster. And this probably spells the end for Derek Nandi, who the Jets signed this offseason from Kansas City. It's clear, based on the reports out of training camp, the Jets do not like what they've seen from Nandi. He's a guy who's pretty much played himself off the roster by the way he performed in Kansas City. So Jets bring in another kind of run-stopping defensive tackle. And, this is it's a clear sign that Aaron Glenn did not think that the Jets had enough to stop the run, because they in one day they bring in 2 run-stopping defensive tackles from other teams. Now, again, Briggs is going to be probably the backup to Phillips. So the Jets probably got their number 1 and number 2 nose tackles, their number 1, number 2 run-stopping defensive tackles in trades yesterday. So Jets clearly focused on upgrading the roster. And that's, if you're looking for like one general positive takeaway from all of this, is that the Jets at least are going to try and make moves to upgrade their roster. Jets are not going to sit around. The Jets are constantly evaluating their roster, and they're not going to sit around. And if they feel there's an upgrade to be made, they will make it.